In the Grisons parish of Avers, winter lasts for 7 months of the year. It is often bitterly cold in Juf, the highest permanently inhabited settlement in Europe, at 2,126 meters above sea level. Its isolation and the snow and ice make living close to nature a necessity. Those who live here at the end of the valley have to like winter. As does Dorli Menn, who lives in this converted barn and is responsible for a safe where important documents from the entire valley are stored. As district president, she represents the lowest level of jurisdiction in the parish. She takes care of readings of wills, for example, but her job is soon to be abolished as the application of law is becoming increasingly centralized and standardized.
Dorli Menn has always been fascinated by the history of her home region. Life was hard in the secluded alpine mountain valley in the old days. Then as now, the alpine meadows gave only 1 cut of hay a year. Far back in this mountain valley, they didn't have electric light or a road until 1964. Dorli Menn's family has lived in the upper Avers valley for many generations. Even her grandparents preferred not to spend the winter high up in Juf, but about 3 miles down the valley in the hamlet of Ambach. Her father was the first person to have the courage to stay in Juf all year round.
In
1948, my father was the first to stay in Juf all winter. Before 1948, people went further down the valley to spend the winter there. Apparently, they thought it was too hard to stay in Juf. Everyone who lived in Juf had another house and a stall to keep the cattle in further down the valley. So they simply moved down there. Grobet was the word they used for the move. They moved all their possessions, all the cattle and all their household goods.
At the far end of the upper valley, people at that time had practically nothing to do with the hamlets of Kampsut and Kröt, which were also part of the parish of Avers, but were about 10 kilometers further out. Close to the Italian border, you have to surmount another 460 meters of altitude to get from Untertal, below the tree line, to Juf at the head of the valley. In the Avers mountain valley, there is very little traffic. Jams are unheard of. The road is salted in winter as far as Cresta. The parish of Avers is located in the valley of the same name. To get there, you head for the San Bernardino Pass from Kur and turn off in a southeasterly direction shortly after Under. The journey from Under to Juf by post bus takes about 50 minutes. On the way, you pass the main town of Cresta, just above the tree line. The administration building of the parish and the famous Edelweiss Church are located here. Cresta also has the only shop in the valley. Its bank agency is open 3 mornings a week. 180 people live in 9 different hamlets belonging to the parish of Avers. The valley has no disco, no police, no doctor, and no cinema. Holidaymakers coming here experience a strikingly alternative program to those offered by the usual tourist resorts.
The Walser people came over the mountains from the south to Avers in the 12th century and have left the marks of their culture on this landscape. They built their houses mainly from local Arven pine and larch. Often they used thick stone on the ground floor for better protection against the cold. Houses used to have a so-called Seelenbalken, which is now seldom found. This was a small window in the facade, only opened up when someone was dying to enable their soul to escape more easily. Traditionally, almost all the families in the Avers Valley kept sheep. They provided not only milk, meat and wool, but also something else that has always been important in the mountain valley in winter: fuel for heating. The dung from the barn floor was pressed into bricks once a month. Only a few farmers still carry on this ancient tradition.
Today
we don't seem to use it quite so much. I'm one of the few who still use sheep dung for heating. When it's dry, it's very similar to briquettes. You don't get a flame, just embers, and they last a long time, like coal briquettes.
The bricks have to dry for 2 years. There's been an incident in the cowshed. One of their 3 cows suffered a minor injury during her morning walk. At the Fums, all the animals go outside at least once a day in winter. Theodor Fum resorts to a well-established home remedy.
This is marmot oil. It's made from marmot fat, which I leave out in the sun. This oil is very good for all kinds of things.
He uses it himself.
Yes, I use it too. If I have a cold, I rub it in. And if I have a sore throat, I even take a slug and gargle with it. It's a miracle cure.
The Fums used to have about 30 head of cattle. Today, due to their age, they have a much smaller herd. Theodor Fum used to work on the ski lift as well, and for over 40 years he was the bailiff and registrar for the parish. He has married countless couples in the beautiful old room on the upper floor of the house. Here, in this former stall, he has kept a memento from his childhood. He has no intention of being separated from this precious item.
This is a very special ski. I went to school on it, and I once skied into a hole and the tip got broken off. You can see the crack here. So I went to the carpenter and he glued on a piece of wood and fixed it with screws. So I kept on using it. That's what I went to school on.
Today, no one goes to school on skis in the Avers Valley anymore, unless it's to the ski school. In the winter season, some Avers residents can earn some welcome extra money as ski instructors. There are 3 lifts in Avers. So far, no one has had to queue up for any of them. Apart from agriculture, tourism is the valley's main industry. They have around 30,000 overnight stays a year. That's 82 stays a day in the whole valley. Most visitors come at the weekend. They come to do tours on snowboards or snowshoes, but also on skis in the traditional way. Some famous tours are especially attractive for visitors to the Forcellina, the Septimer Pass or the Fiz Turba. But in recent times, it is not only the magnificent snow slopes which have been drawing sports enthusiasts into Avers. The icefalls, which are mainly to be found below the tree line, are now a further attraction. One of the few local ice climbers is Daniel Kunfermann, who works for the parish during the week. Together with Hans-Peter Tobler, you can find him on an icefall almost every weekend. It's not always as cold as today.
Minus 19 Grad haben wir heute Aussentemperatur.
It's minus 19 degrees today, but if you put on the right clothes and keep moving, it's no problem. I've installed a small shoe heater, an inner sole that you can heat with a battery. That gives me a little extra warmth.
The colder it is, the more brittle the ice. So you have to hammer in the ice pick further in until it holds really well.
We have ice pretty much all the time, even when there isn't much snow. We almost always have temperatures cold enough for ice. And everywhere we have water and waterfalls that freeze, relatively close by.
Word of this has spread in the ice climbing scene, and the fact that you can find the highest levels of difficulty here. So Avers is no longer an insider's tip, but is widely known as a paradise for ice climbers. This man is travelling through the snow for professional reasons. Simon Jäger is the gamekeeper in Avers, and he also has to make sure that the ice climbers respect the wildlife zones. He's been on the move here for 20 years, checking the health and condition of the wildlife. About 600 chamois live in the Avers Valley. In addition, there are around 150 roe deer and about as many stags. The living conditions are often very hard for the animals in winter. Simon Jäger is constantly amazed at how they manage to survive these harsh winters.
These are really amazing in the way they bear up and stay alive for days, weeks or months in the snow and cold and the storms we have. In my opinion, it's really extraordinary how these animals are able to keep going with so little food and so many other difficulties to overcome. It always impresses me. I can walk to the same place 100 times and it's never the same. I never get bored either. Wherever you go, you always see something. You can always learn something new. You never stop learning.
On his patrols, he is used to finding dead animals or their remains. Here, a bird was torn apart and almost completely eaten up. On some feathers, the gamekeeper's expert eye notices some fox dung. The tracks in the snow also point to the identity of the attacker.
It looks as if a raven had been attacked. It may have been injured, and at some point a fox came along and tracked and killed the raven, and judging by the surroundings, probably ate it as well.